Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our second webinar in the ISWP's training webinar series by experts. So today we have Silvana Contepomi, a physical therapist and an assistive technology engineer all the way from Argentina, who is going to present on the topic user assessment for wheelchair service provision, why and how. So I am going to hand it over to Silvana now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen so that I can share what we're going to talk about today. First of all, thank you all for being here and for your interest in this topic that is one of my favorites, this step of the assessment in the wheelchair service provision, no? The step 2 of the service. So thank you very much for being there. And of course, I would like to thank very much ISWP for because of their mission to serve as a global resource for wheelchair standards. I would like to thank them for bringing all together here and to try to build up this ecosystem that definitely we need to build it up to professionalize the service of wheelchair service provision. As you see, this piece of cake bringing is out all together and to build up this cake. Of course, we know that the slices will be very different. We are many different stakeholders and different needs that we need to serve the user through a good service. So thank you, ISWP, for organizing all these webinars and for doing all the advocacy, the research, and all the standards that you're working on to build up this for the user. So thank you very much. As you know, or maybe you know, this webinar, I'm going to give it today in English and next Friday in Spanish. That is my home language. So what are we going to talk today, or what I want to share with you today? We are going to talk about the assessment of the user in wheelchair service provision. And we put these 2 questions that are the ones that we are going to go through the presentation, that is the why to do this assessment and how to do it. We know that finally this is a practical, a hands-on step, and we need to what to do. No, it's if we do a parallelism with how to learn to ride on a bike. No, it's first we need to know how to do it, but then we need to know what to do. No, when we get into the street, we have to learn many other things on how to keep on doing that learning thing. No, and that is more practical on this aspect. But today we are going to go through the why and the how, and I believe very much in the why. It gives meaning on why do we have to learn on how to do an assessment in this case. So we are going to go through these 2 questions around this step in the wheelchair service provision, that is the assessment of the user. Of course, we know that when we talk of assistive technology and all these devices is in this umbrella term of the assistive technology, always on the basis there is a need. No, there is something we need to compensate about mobility, about posture, about different functions that the user needs to do in the wheelchair. But also remember that when we talk of assistive technology, there are a lot of other devices and other technologies that can compensate other functions. No, we know the numbers that of this need we are trying to address with a good service are very big. We know that 70 million people in the world need a wheelchair, and only 50% access to the appropriate one. No? So this is the need, why we need to understand better on how to give up or how to provide a good service for this provision. If we think on why assessments for it, there's a lot of literature going on that explain us this step of the assessment of the user for AT. It's very important. Some authors tell us that it's, of course, part of a process. It's not the end part of the provision, the assessment. It's the beginning. It's part of a process. We need other things going on for a good provision. Also, it's said how the quality of the assessment impacts on the abandonment of technology. We know that this is a huge problem in wheelchair service provision. It's very much described how the products are abandoned and are not used, or they do harm to the people. And the quality of the assessment can improve considerably that provision. And also, a good assessment can minimize the risk of mismatch, with of the technology with the user. So this, we start understanding some of the whys of the big world of the assessment on assistive technology. Also, the assessment is where we can consider many factors that can make us match the objective needed and the subjective needed. I mean, if there is some objective need of mobility, for example, somebody who cannot walk, who cannot move in a smooth surface for 15 meters, and what is the need of the user to move? How we can compensate that limitation of function? And that is important to understand it in the assessment. What are we going to compensate? What are we going to provide to the user so that we can compensate that functional limitation? No? Also, I must mention that there are several processes of assessment of AT. I'm going to mention only the two more well-known, and I would like to propose you to get to know this good processes of assessment in the matching person and technology that was developed, and it's still on an ongoing process on how to develop this assessment in the approach of matching person and technology. It's a framework model, no? Where the focus is of course, it tells you about that the technology itself, it will not work for the person. You need to match the person to the technology through an assessment, no? And the other model or framework for assessment is the human activity and assistive technology in a context. No, this three aspects put in a context to better describe how the user can get to use the technology. No, so they're there. If we talk about the why we need to make an assessment, or why we need a good service for wheelchair service provision, the whys can impact different levels. It can impact the government level through the rights and through the how they're going to better use the money for provision. It will impact in the individual and in the society. So there's a lot of whys that we can explore depending on where you're standing as a stakeholder for wheelchair service provision. But we're going to get closer, because today we're talking about the service wheelchair provision, no? And I would like to mention that there are two concepts, very important concepts that were developed in 2008 in the guidelines on provisions of manual wheelchairs. That is the concept of appropriate wheelchair and the concept that an appropriate wheelchair that has these requirements, no, to meet the user's need, to meet the user's environment needs, to be safe and durable, that can be maintained in a country and repaired locally. This is an appropriate wheelchair through the definition of the WHO, but they also say that the only way to get an appropriate wheelchair is through a service in 8 steps. And these are two very important concepts to understand the need of developing this process of service to get the appropriate wheelchair. I must also mention that there, through these past years, since the new paradigm of the International Classification of Functioning and Handicap, there has been a lot of efforts to develop different materials that let us know, understand, and be trained in how to do this type of service and how to introduce benefits for the wheelchair service provision to the user. So mainly today I'm going to all the reference, although I'm going to introduce some concepts of the why, deeper concepts of the why, but all the reference will be based in the wheelchair service training package developed in the basic level in 2010 and in the intermediate level in 2012. And they were based also in these guidelines provided in 2008 by the WHO. No? So there we are. So this always, when we talk of wheelchair service, of wheelchair provision, we talk of a service in 8 steps. And the objective of that service is to get to the appropriate wheelchair, and not to a wheelchair, to the appropriate wheelchair. And one of the steps is the assessment. This is the second step. We have this process of the 8 steps. The second one is the assessment, and there is where we are going to stand today to try to understand the how to do it, but also the why we're doing each part of the house in the assessment. It's like the beginning. After the referral, you just need to introduce to this service provision through the assessment. Sorry. So here we have a picture. It's an Instagram picture, and definitely anyone who watches this picture will say this is an inappropriate wheelchair for this child, no? Because of the support, he's not receiving the needed support. He's not. It's not designed for better use in the environment, and maybe it's not safe and durable. I don't know. I cannot touch it, but maybe it's not safe and durable. But he has this wheelchair, and our efforts needs to be how are we going to match this product or the needed product. Maybe sometimes we can fit it's badly fitted, and sometimes we have to prepare another product. But how are we going to match this product with the user? There is no way to do it if we do not start with information of the user. We need information to make decisions, to change this picture, and to provide this child with a correct or with the appropriate wheelchair. No, so all our efforts in the assessment are focused on the information we need to get for them to choose and to start finding out what training needs the user. So all our information will be focused on the choosing of the, but there is no way to choose a product if we do not have that type of information. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to go through the assessment process, but you will see that we'll start finding some issues that we have to have that information to be sure that then they are going to be trained in the use of that device. Mm-hmm. So it's for choosing and training. And I would like to put this example before introducing in the assessment forms and the way of how to do it. I always have this image of Alice in Wonderland, no? And at the point where Alice she's lost in the forest and she needs to choose between two roads, and she finds a Cheshire Cat and asks, which road do I take? And the cat says, where do you want to go? I don't know. So the cat answers, if you don't know where you want to go, then it doesn't matter which way you go. And this, I think, happens the same with the service of wheelchair service provision. If we don't know the need of the user, we can choose any chair. The choosing, the selection, the prescription of the wheelchair is based on the need of the user, the physical need and the environment need and the social need and all the information we're going to get in the assessment. Mm-hmm. So this is an image I always say, if I need to know to choose, I need to know to choose. If not, the choose will be done. It's the same. It's the same as a Cheshire Cat mentioned to Alice in Wonderland. So we are going to get prepared for the assessment. The assessment is done. It's always centered in the user. The user is the center of our assessment because we want to find out information on him or her, no, on the user. And what are the abilities we need to bring to this assessment? We need to bring our ears to hear the user. We need communication skills to be prepared to communicate with a level of the user and the family. We also need an eye to watch. We need our hands to touch and to see what's happening there, especially with the body. And we need to write what we find out for then making the better decisions. That information needs to be stayed somewhere, not in our memory. We have to write it down. So all these are the abilities we need to bring out to this assessment based on the user. The user is our center, and he will be what we need to know. We are kind of very aware of what is happening to the user or with the user to try to understand their needs. So the assessment in the how, we start the how. You will see that the presentation will go with the how and the why back and forth, because they are the how needs to have a basis on the why. If not, it's not like we have nothing to do and I'm going to tell you complete this form and just do it. No, the form or all the information that is going to be in the form, it's based on a why, and that is what we're going to go through today. The assessment has two parts, what we call the interview and what we call the physical assessment. And on purpose, I put this picture like this, because in the assessment, although we are looking at a body, I would say, and we have to address in this assessment for the wheelchair service provision, we need to address two main important conclusions that needs to do with the posture and with the mobility of this person. But this person has a face, but with a face has a life. And that is a lot of information we need to address in the assessment, the life of that person. Because with the wheelchair provision, we need to impact the life of that person. So it's not only about the body, but it's also about their desires, wishes, etc. No? And I also have, I put this to differentiate these two aspects of the assessment that is to then impact in the choosing of the wheelchair or the selection of the wheelchair. That is posture that will bring us to think about what sitting system, will be provided, and all the issues that needs to do with mobility to compensate that limitation of mobility that needs to do mostly with the frame. Of course, they are very much related, but usually it helps to divide these two aspects of in the knowledge on getting the information of the assessment for wheelchair service provision. So we start with the A, the first part, that is what we call the interview. In the interview, it's you can imagine that here you have some of those tools that you're bringing. No, you have the communication skills, the listening, the watching. Those are the skills that you need here to develop this how to do it. And you have 4 steps in the how to do this assessment. You need 4 things to do. One, and for me, it's key, and it's one of the most important, because it's through this one that we're going to measure our success. That is, what are the objectives of the user? For what does the user needs the wheelchair? We're going to go through this, no? But this is key. So objectives of the user and the other information we need to know, who's living with, etc., all kind of information. But including objectives. I would say objectives including other information. Then we need to know about the physical condition. It's not a physical assessment. That will come in the second part. It's the condition. Is it a condition that will get worse or not, etc., Now we'll go through. But all this physical condition will help us to provide support to the user in sitting system. The kind of lifestyle they have, it's very important to match the user with the technology so that he can use the wheelchair, especially for mobility. And also in the interview, this question for me is very important. That is, what happens with the existing wheelchair? We need to understand why that wheelchair is not working. So let's go through this, how to do this first part of the assessment. So as I was saying, the first part, the A1, is the own goals of the user. So usually the first question we need to ask is, why did you come to the wheelchair service today? How can a wheelchair help you to do more things? Or what are you expecting that the wheelchair will help you to do? And try to listen and not only write down the goal, but maybe if it's not clear, that goal, try to know more about it. It is for eating, it is for playing, it is for moving. Why, how that wheelchair will help you to do or to keep up a better life. No, this, I think, as I said before, is one of the most important whys. We need to know. I mean, it's not somebody that I'm going to just put a wheelchair that I chose from a catalog, but I need it to know in every step I want to be sure in every step I give in the service that I'm going to guarantee that user's goal. So this is very important to know and to keep our hand in there. So goals, I have here some examples, and I have here different people using a wheelchair for their lives. And you see different goals in a school, to communicate or to play, to be with relatives, to go out with your daughter for a ride, or to be outside. I mean, you have different goals on using the wheelchair. You need to know those goals just to be sure that in all the process of the service, each decision you take will take you back to fulfill that goal of the user. The second aspect of the interview, we are not doing the physical assessment. We are getting to know a little bit more on the physical condition. And in here, we need information of their health condition in general, prognosis, capabilities, any other aspects that we need to know for wheelchair service provision about the physical condition of the user. This is very important because maybe we pick up some information that we also need to consider for the next step, that will be the selection of them. The third part of the interview, it's a very important part. All of them are important. But what do I like of this one? I need to get into their lifestyle and environment, because there are many information in there that I need to know it, because the decisions in the next step of the prescription will be very critical in terms of the characteristics I will choose for the wheelchair. So the questions we ask in this interview is where you will use the wheelchair. That will impact in the types of terrains, the spaces, are they big, are they small, the heights that we need to think. Maybe he used it in an office, and then we need to know the heights of the desks very much for then to provide a wheelchair. What distance are you traveling? Is it long, is it short? That will impact a lot in which position and the types of wheels you're going to choose. Yeah? So you see here the relation on the how to do it, but why you are asking these questions. So this is one of the most important message I want to leave in the webinar today. There is a why after each of these questions. So it's not just I need to know the hours, but the hours will impact how many hours do you stay sitting in the wheelchair. It's not the same, for example, for what type of backrest I'm going to give, what kind, the risk of developing pressure sores, what other options you have coming out of the wheelchair, what type of transfers, how do you transfer in and out of the wheelchair? Not only your ability, but how are you doing it? Alone, somebody's helping you, and that will impact, of course, in many characteristics of the wheelchair in the prescription. No, what type of transport do you have? Public, private? Do you use? Do you have a car? Do you have to fold how big is the place where you can put your wheelchair. If not, maybe we can think here, if we go on building this, how to do it, maybe one of the objectives that the user had was to go and visit their relatives, and he was going to do that by car, and then we give a wheelchair that he cannot put inside the car, and so it's the same of not that objective will not be fulfilled because we did not consider in the assessment that information for them make a good selection. No? So this is the time of information of the user. The last part of this first part of the A part of the assessment is what we call the existing wheelchair. I mean, the picture I showed you of that child in an appropriate wheelchair, it's obvious it is inappropriate, but we need to know why. Why it's not meeting the needs. And we also have a lot of information and clues that we can find on what we can call like the history of use of his body, no? In the existing wheelchair. We can see asymmetries, we can see a break or damage of some of and we can start thinking, why is this damage? What information do I need of the body of the user that is going to come now in the second part of the assessment? What information do I need of the user that can tell me more on why this was broken? Why do I have a print of the body asymmetry? What other help does he need? I mean, the existing wheelchair, we need to analyze what happened with that wheelchair. Also for information and try to not make the same mistake in the provision, of course. So this is important information we need to know to finish this first part of the interview. Mm-hmm. Now we go to what we call the physical assessment. Now, yes, it's an assessment of the physical aspects of the user. We have also 4 aspects to analyze and to get information of that physical. We just have all the knowledge or all the information about the lifestyle of the user. We did it in the first part of the assessment form, but now we're going to understand the physical. Remember that we need information for the sitting system and for the frame of the wheelchair. And this information we'll have it here, especially for the sitting system. So how we do it, we also have 4 different steps or instances or a process. Yeah? And when I say a process, it's to do it in this order, because the order will bring us this information in place. The 4 things are, we are going to first try to think about the risk of pressure sores or possible damage to the skin. Always, the why is always no harm comes first. I mean, to fulfill the objectives of the user with the use of a wheelchair, it's our goal, but always with no harm. So this is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to identify also the method of pushing that will impact in the seating, but also in the frame, in the prescription of the seating system and the frame. We are going to analyze, and this is my favorite posture, how the user sits and what additional support is needed. And this is why we need to do this, because we need to provide comfort and stability to that body to provide better function in the wheelchair, and to fulfill his own objectives. And the last part is we need to take measures, and this is for the fitting. The wheelchair needs to be fitted. So here we have the how and the why. Always in the how, that it's a form, a form we can go through. There's a why at the back of it. So we'll go through this. First, we need to identify, as I said, the risk. We know that there are many risks the person can have for developing pressure sores or damage to the skin. There are ones that are more important, or where if we detect this risks, we need to be sure that we provide a device that can make no harm with the best stability. We have, as I said, this information, we have to write it down, and we have to understand in which level of risk, and this will impact directly in the surfaces of the seating system that will be provided to the user. Then we need to identify, we are in the second part of the physical assessment. We need to identify what method of pushing. Is he or she going to be assisted, self-propelled, with the hands, with the feet, both? It would be a mix. All this information we needed, because it will impact directly on which frame are we going, how we are going to set up the frame of the wheelchair. The heights, if the method of pushes with the feet or with one foot, the height, it's very crucial. If the propelling with the hands, the axe is very crucial on to provide that the possibility of pushing effectively the wheelchair. This is the second part. Now we go to the third part of this finding, very important in the physical assessment. That is my favorite. And what happens here? We need to find out how the wheelchair, of course, in a wheelchair, our functioning is going to be seated. So we need to find how the user sits and what kind of additional support he will need. And here I bring you a reflection to be provided in how to analyze this need of the user on how he's sitting. That is a reflection on, if we see a building which has a window that it's not straight, that it's not saying straight, and you are saying and you want to put that window straight, and you don't need to be an architect to understand that if you want this window to be straight, the problem is the basis. If the basis is unlevel, the window will be unlevel with the basis. The same, this is a mechanic thing of a body, like a house. The same happens with us. If we see somebody whose head is not in the middle, the first thing, it's not the only thing, but the first thing we need to know is how can we provide this user with the best basis level, so that then we can put all the structure, the body structures in place to have the window over the basis, or the head over the pelvis. That is why we put a lot of efforts in the assessment to understand how can we improve the basis of the body in sitting that is the pelvis and the lower extremities and the feet, no? The inferior surface where the body, we all know that all the putting up straight needs, or a body can be organized over a surface. Weight bearing on the surface can improve how straight we can move over and put our head over our hips, no? The shoulders over the hip and be in straight. So most of our effort here is to understand in the user, how can we provide the better stable basis for providing. So when we talk about what is the need of, it's very frequent we say we want to find out the need of the user. When we talk of the body of the user, what we understand by need? The body for functioning needs two conditions: to be stable and to be comfort. Why? To be stable, we need it because of our mechanics. The mechanics, we need to weight bear here to use our arms and the head in front. So we need to be stable and not moving from, because if the body is moving from one place to the other one, we need a lot of motor control to stabilize that. So here we're going to provide stability with the devices. But we also need comfort. Why do we need comfort? Because our body is not only, as I showed just now, a house with no sensitivity. Our body works, our motor aspects works based on the sensory aspect. We are going to respond on how we feel. So we need to provide both things, stability and comfort in the sitting system. And that is, we need to find out, when we say the need of the user, we want to find out for this special user, how can we make his body more stable while comfort? And this will do it with three different things. We'll do three things. We're still in the B3, finding out how the wheelchair user sits and what additional support would they need. We need three different things. We need to watch how he can sit without support. We need to do a pelvis and hip postural screen, and we need to do a hand simulation. So the first thing is to understand how the person sits without support, if possible, of course, no? And understand and watch and observe and see what response his body is having to this position, to this surface of sitting, no? In sitting without support, where the pelvis is going, the shoulders, the lower extremities, which surfaces is using to sit, and we have to observe from the front and from the side. And in the assessment, we need to write down what we observe. We can write it down. We can have pictures and draw over them, or we can write down the drawing of what we're seeing, of course, with the levels that we are seeing. No, remember always that if we draw the pelvis from the front, we need to have the two ischions. No, the pelvis has two sides when we watch on the front, to understand if it's level or not, the right and the left side. While when we watch on the side, we have this type of, in the sagittal plane, we can see how the pelvis is moved back and forth, and here how it is level. So we have to write it down. The second thing we're going to do to understand how, the why, remember, was why, because we need to provide this very special stabilizing or leveling the pelvis. That is our objective, to understand what's happening with the user, no? So can the pelvis be level, yes or no? And what's happening with the hips? And we are going to understand what happens. So we have to make a screen first, understanding first if we can level the pelvis. We are taking out what's happening with the hips here. We are just trying to understand if the pelvis can be level with the spine, or not. If we can be level, it can be level with the spine. That is a very important finding, because if we can level here the pelvis with the spine, we need to go and find out what is happening with the hips, because the hips are going to be also supporting the surface, and depending on how the hips are, if this level pelvis that we find out in the first part of the screening can be sustained or not. So the second thing we need to do is to understand the right and the left pelvis. How are they, if they can reach to neutral or to 90 degrees in sitting. Of course, we are doing this in a mat evaluation, or in lying, stabilizing. Somebody stabilize the pelvis, as find it out in the last finding, that it was the pelvis could be leveled without the intervention of the hips. And now we'll find out what happens with the hips. If we need to compensate or not, these findings we have. Because if somebody has an open angle or more than 90 degrees or less than 90 degrees, this will impact directly on the leveling of the pelvis when we sit the person on the surface. So,
Silvana, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We have less than like 10 minutes, so we can file some questions. So I just wanted to let you know. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. Thank you for, I'm not watching the, sorry, but I was not watching the clock. I think I can do it in 5 minutes to finish this. So as you see, all the decisions we find out in the pelvis and hip postural screening will impact on how we can hold this pelvis. And we have the last part of this findings of that is what we call this hand simulation. We are going to simulate before going to the last part that is taking measures. We're going to simulate how can we provide this pelvic stability. And maybe if we find out that we need to open, because the user has an open angle, it has more than 90 degrees, and we need to open the angle of the pelvis, we can use what we call temporary supports to find out if we can still maintain the level of the pelvis. These findings afterwards in the selection, we are going to put them into the prescription of the cushion. So this is a very clear why. This is how he was seated. Although we changed the wheelchair, but it's not only the wheelchair, the changing or the bringing up another wheelchair, what it changed, but it also changed what we've done to address this open angle of the pelvis, so the pelvis can be level and he can sit upright, weight bearing on the cushion. So this is very important. The hand simulation I was just mentioning also has to be informed in the form, and we have to write down all the places where that we find out that he needs additional postural support, because all this additional postural support is what we're going to prescribe afterwards in the next step. The last part of this assessment is to take measures, as you see, and this is very important. For taking measures, we have to consider in the assessments taking measures of the body. Then some of these findings we are going to translate into the components of the wheelchair, and that depends on which wheelchair we are going to use, like the backrest, the heights, etc. No, but taking measures of the body. This is very important to give the support needed. If we do not have the measures, we are not going to be able to provide the needed support. This is a recommendation. There's a clinical application guide to the standards where you can find many of these measures, both lineal and angular measures. These are all pictures of internet. I don't know any of these users. As you see, and we always think that in less developed countries, it's the only place where we have inappropriate wheelchairs. But I don't know if you recognize this man. He's Kirk Douglas, an actor. And of course, as you can see, the wheelchair is not and his wife. He is not appropriate. So he also needs a good assessment. But you can see all these were donations. There are different places where they donate the wheelchair, all inappropriate. I'm sure you can find out that they're not going to fulfill the objectives of the user, and hopefully they're not going to do harm, although I think they're going to do harm. This is a very brief summary of all the process I have done. I usually, at the end, in the assessment, I usually put what are the objectives of the user. For example, to sit with comfort, to play, to watch in the wheelchair, to be assisted in mobility 20 minutes to school. What is happening, or what is the cause that it's not happening in this wheelchair to the user? The instability of the pelvis, the hands are not loading, etc. What characteristics of the technology I need to be there in the prescription to be sure that I'm going to compensate this cause or to resolve the problem. And then comes the product, and then comes the product. The same happens to this lady. To this girl. If she wants to be independent in school mobility, the rear wheels are far back, the armrest is interfering. We need to understand that this is the moment in the assessment to understand. Oh, I'm sorry, it's in Spanish here, but the next step is the choosing, the selection, the prescription. But how are we going to select the appropriate wheelchair if we do not have all the information of the need of the user, the characteristics they need for each aspects of the seating systems and the frame? The last thing I want to say is that the user needs to be involved in the assessment and in the selection. The user needs to understand that the devices will help them to achieve their goals, but only if it's well fitted, it's of course correctly, appropriately selected, well fitted, and well trained. So all this is part of the assessment and the information that we need the user involved in the assessment and in the selection. So this is another case I was going to show you on how this is a hand simulation, but to change, this is the same wheelchair with other supports that we decided. So last thing, in these 8 steps, the assessment is like the door that opens to go to the next steps. It's not the only one, but you will not get to the appropriate wheelchair if you do not start or you open the door with a good assessment. And last thing is I want to encourage you to get certified in ISWP as a wheelchair service provider. I think this is helping a lot in many settings to professionalize our sector, to give more dignity to the user and to help the user to fulfill their objectives. So here we are.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Silvana. It was very informative. And thank you again for sharing ISWP resources towards the end. That was great. Thank you. So we have a few minutes to ask some questions. So we have one question already in the chat from Isaac. What do we do for clients who already have unleveled pelvic?
Thank you for that question. Perfect. It's a very good question. The first thing is we need to know that he has an unleveled, and we need to know in the assessment. Our job is to understand, to know, and to be very precise on what are the causes of that unleveled pelvis. Is it the hip? Is it the trunk? Is what is happening there? And then we have to compensate that if we do have an unleveled pelvis, if we do have an unleveled pelvis, I'm sorry, this is not flexible, so it goes out all like the house, the window goes with the basic. It's not unleveled, but if it's unleveled pelvis because of the trunk, and you cannot put it level, you will need to give the high ischion, you will need to provide support, because if you don't give support to that ischion, you will need to do some accommodation to the cushion to give support to the high ischion so that it can be supported on a surface. Because if it's not supported, the body is still going on. The only way that this part of the body can get organized and try to be more straight if it comes weight bear. So you compensate this. If the unleveled pelvis, you have this, the trunk or the spine is flexible and you can level, but the asymmetry or the unleveled pelvis comes because of the hips, you need to compensate. Sorry, you need to compensate. You need to compensate and to provide the open angle or the close angle at the hip, so that all the femur is also supported. No? But that is maybe I mentioned at the beginning that it's what to do. No, what to do. It's a very important aspect on decisions that. But the first thing is we need the information. We just not can say the pelvis is unleveled. We need to understand why it's unleveled. That is the first step we need to do for then compensate.
Thank you so much, Silvana. We really wish we had more time. So my apologies for other participants who had other questions. We will definitely be answering all your questions via email. Maybe we'll just take one last question. So sorry, may I ask a quick question? How do you distinguish positioning and hand simulation? I frequently receive this question from therapists here in Japan.
Okay. I usually call positioning to the, I go back. Hand simulation, it's your intervention to understand with all the knowledge that you just have because of knowing the screen of the pelvis and the hips, you are going to give with your hands your sensation on where and how much support that body needs to be stable and comfort. That is hand simulation. You are doing it. Positioning, I call it when we are selecting devices that are going to provide. I mean, of course, I can do positioning with my hands, but I cannot stay the whole day there. So I call positioning when we are providing devices that can give that result of the hand simulation you have done. Am I clear with that? I don't know. But it's, I mean, with the hand simulation, you are positioning the person, but you cannot stay there. And usually it's more than one person doing the hand simulation. I didn't mention this, but the hand simulation, it's one person is the one who's guiding and who's when you find, like, I can level the pelvis, but now the trunk is moving, I can ask somebody to stay where I find that it was the level pelvis and then go over there and see how much support he needs in the trunk, for example, no? So I know that it's information. You in the assessment, you need information. It's not, don't go directly to the decision. Don't think on the product first. Think on understanding the life of the user and the body of the user. I would say, I will resume to that. That is the only thing we need to do in the assessment, and to write it down don't forget all the information you find out. And then we can make many decisions, always talking to because the other thing is, when we make decisions on selecting, I like to have this image. It's like you have a luggage and you want to go to holidays, and everything, you cannot put all your clothes in the luggage. You have to choose. And maybe maybe you go there and then you miss something, but in terms of, you have to, in the selection, the user has to be there, because maybe he wants to, for example, the rough terrain, but then he has an office to work. Okay, he cannot have the best characteristics of both frames. I mean, we have to go to the middle. So that's why we need the user in the assessment and in the selection. No?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Silvana. We really wish we could listen to you all day, but I'm so sorry that we'll have to cut off here. So thank you again for your time and for this great explanation and this amazing presentation. We really thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And let's get together in ISWP. All of you get into the webpage and participate, so we can build a big community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.